What is up, everybody? Welcome to the first edition of the NFL Pre-Lock Show here on RotoGrinders for Week 1, Thursday Night Football. We've got the Bills, we've got the Rams kicking off the 2022 NFL season. That means big DFS contests. You can do some sports betting if you're in a legal sports betting state. We've got you covered over at RotoGrinders for that, or Scores and Odds rather for that. Check us out, scoresandodds.com. And over at RotoGrinders, we've got you covered with a jam-packed media content schedule this year, from single entry to showdown, everything in between, all the main slates, all the showdown slates, all the primetime games. We've got you covered this NFL season. You can follow us right here on the RotoGrinders YouTube channel and on our daily fantasy football podcast feed, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. I know a lot of people like to listen in the car, audio only. You can get that on the podcast feed as well. So just a massive schedule of football shows at RotoGrinders. This year, you can see some of that stuff on the screen there. Plenty of free shows that come your way. We got a few premium shows as well, but all sorts of different hosts and great stuff here at RotoGrinders. So we'll have rotating hosts kind of on these primetime shows. So for Week 1, Thursday Night Football, you get myself, Justin Van Zuiden, a.k.a. STL Cardinals 84, and we've got Mr. Will Priester, who's sporting the Carolina Panthers hat. He's ready to go for Week 1, the revenge game right away for Baker Mayfield. So that'll be coming your way Sunday. But Will, how you doing?
Well, I'm going to touch on that briefly because I know we're talking Rams-Bills. Let me just say that I do not like Baker Mayfield. Let me also just say I love Baker Mayfield. And it's because I'm a fan and he's my quarterback and I've got to live with it. And I'm going to rock with him this season, Justin, until he proves me wrong or until he gives me a reason to just say, look, let's just move on. But I'm not a Baker Mayfield fan, but I am a Carolina Panthers fan. As a result, I am hoping Baker Mayfield has the best season of his career this season up in Charlotte at Bank of America Stadium.
I'm sure he particularly wants to get it off to a good start this weekend, so we'll see how that goes come Sunday. And tonight, we have what should be a really good football game. You know, a lot of times these Thursday night games, you get some bad teams, but in Week 1, they don't want to start it off that way. You got the Rams, defending Super Bowl champions, coming out against a Buffalo team that many seem to think is the favorite this year. And the Bills are a 2.5-point road favorite, so you can check out. Looks like our producer Devin dropped a poll in the YouTube chat, who you got winning the game tonight, and it seems like the public is really on Buffalo. Surprises me a little bit to see, a team playing at home as the defending Super Bowl champions. Really didn't lose a whole lot. I mean, obviously Van Jefferson is out tonight. He's really the only main injury of note, and they don't have Robert Woods anymore. But outside of that, most of the core for the Rams, their skill players remains intact. And it just goes to show you how much kind of the public steam is building towards Buffalo potentially having a special season. So we'll dig into the plays here in a sec. Usually we start with injuries, but again, there's really not much. Isaiah McKenzie was on the injury report earlier in the week for Buffalo, but he will play, and Van Jefferson is out for the Rams. So maybe you get some deep third and fourth receiver options there for the Rams that we can dig into here over the next half an hour or so. But Will, how do you see this game playing out in general tonight?
Well, I think both teams get off to a somewhat slow start in the first quarter, like just trying to feel it out. First live game, Thursday Night Football, opening up the season. I'm expecting some false start penalties, some offside penalties. Like that's what I'm expecting the first quarter. Maybe it doesn't go that way, but I'm always expecting kind of a, rocky start. And then by the second quarter, I'm expecting these teams to really get going. So if it's 0-0 first quarter, don't be alarmed. I prefer it be like 6-6 from field goals. I have a ton of money invested in field goal props tonight. But that's really honestly how I think the game is going to go. And then I think in the second quarter, I think we're going to see these teams take off a little bit. Ending score for me, I'm thinking something like, 27-24. Like that's kind of what I've got in my mind as a final score for this game, or 27-23, something to that effect. That's kind of how I think this game goes. Not that these aren't high-powered offenses, but just coming back. Both teams have enough defensive presence to slow the other offense down a little bit if they're sputtering right out of the gate. And I think we'll go from there. The Rams are the Super Bowl champs, and I think Buffalo is still really hungry, a really hungry team. Haven't had that taste of glory yet. And I actually secretly hope, if my team doesn't win, I hope Buffalo can get a Super Bowl and redeem themselves from the old Jim Kelly era of continuing to go and never winning it all. So, but yeah, that's how I think the game's going to go. Starts out slow, picks up. By the end of the game, I'm expecting both quarterbacks to be rolling.
Yeah, I do agree with the slow start potentially being a thing. We're probably going to see that in quite a few games. A lot of the star players just don't play in the preseason anymore. So you're going to see a little bit more rust from the starters. I also briefly misspoke when I was kind of introducing everything, in case I caused any confusion. Our kind of angle that we take with a lot of sports betting is with scores and odds. So you can check that out at scoresandodds.com. And in fact, I'll actually just bring it up here on the screen share for just a second. You can see we've got a good offer for BetMGM, but we've got 9 picks in for tonight's football game over at Scores and Odds. And you can see a lot of our folks that also do the DFS side over at RotoGrinders do some of the content over at Scores and Odds as well. Kevin Roth, you can see, likes the over in the second half of the game with the heat wave that's going through the West Coast. But we've got all sorts of box scores of all the baseball games that are going on right now, several picks and lots of stuff that we're building over at Scores and Odds. So you can check that out at scoresandodds.com. And then, of course, at RotoGrinders, we mainly focus on the DFS side that we will bring you here for these primetime shows. And I will bring up our lineup HQ build now. And we kind of like to go, if you're new to daily fantasy in the showdown format, it's not a full roster. On DraftKings, you start with a captain, which costs 1.5 times your salary, the salary of a normal position, and also earns 1.5 times the fantasy points. And then you've just got flex positions to fill out the rest of your roster, which can be players from any position. You're not restricted to only being able to play one running back, 2 wide receivers, anything like that. You basically get the flexibility within the salary cap to put players from whatever position you want in there. And with the captain position carrying more weight and higher salaries, obviously you want an upside play, a guy that can score a lot of fantasy points in that captain slot. So if we're looking at captains on DraftKings tonight, you got the 2 quarterbacks and the 2 top wide receivers projecting as the highest owned plays. That is standard. Sometimes you'll get, a lower salary captain that's maybe an underpriced player that also has some upside. But Will, how are you handling your captain spot tonight?
Well, I think I'm either going all the way up or I'm going down like to this kind of mid-range here. So I think we've seen so much, Justin, that for whatever reason, wide receiver 1 just kind of carries the captain position a lot. In this particular case, though, Josh Allen is probably the stud of all studs, I think, on this slate because of the outs that he has to score fantasy points. So, he could end up with a 275, 280-yard passing game, 2 passing touchdowns, 50 yards rushing, and a touchdown, and could just blow this slate wide open from a fantasy points perspective. I think there's enough value to be able to get Josh Allen at captain tonight. So he's someone that I definitely like. And then my sneaky captain play is Gabe Davis. Like he's going to garner some ownership. But if we think Gabe Davis is kind of going to have this, revolutionary season because of his new role on the team, we've seen Gabe Davis go for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in a minor role. So in a more prevalent role, what if him and Diggs now are kind of splitting target share where Diggs is around, let's say 25, 26%, and Gabe Davis is around 21, 22%. Well, for the price difference, I like that a lot. And I think if, when we were kind of talking about props, I kind of used it. DFS and props go hand in hand to me with the thinking of it. if we think Josh Allen is going to have a monster game, then we need to have exposure, I think, to Davis, Diggs, or both, or Dawson Knox, or the passing game, Crowder. Like, we need to be loading up on the passing game if we're thinking Allen is really going to be airing the ball out. So I like Gabe Davis a great deal in this spot. I like Jamison Crowder as well. My hunch, and I could be wrong, and I reserve the right to be wrong on week one because we're trying to predict outcomes that we haven't seen. But I think Jamison Crowder might be the new Cole Beasley of the Buffalo Bills offense. And if so, this is tremendous value for him at 7.5K. So I like him a lot. And those are my handful of plays from the Buffalo side that I'm very interested in. I like Devin Singletary too. If they give him the same workload he had at the end of the season, squarely in play, I'm hoping we see that. And if so, then he should have a good game as well.
Yeah, I think those secondary wide receivers are your contrarian captains. I know Carolina guy was asking in our Discord chat, our live stream chat over at RotoGrinders, and you can check that out, rotogrinders.com/Discord. That is a free channel, so you just have to have a RotoGrinders membership. You don't have to be a premium subscriber to access that. But the live stream chat, you can access that chat if you'd like to chat along with us in addition to the YouTube chat. But he was asking about the favorite FanDuel MVP in a large field GPP and the ownership, because FanDuel's salary cap is generally a little bit softer. The ownership even tends to climb higher on the quarterbacks and the number one wide receivers. So I think your contrarian angle is somebody like Gabe Davis. I am not as high on Gabe Davis as the field. I get it. But I think this is still a player that's going to be relatively inconsistent. He's gotten a lot of buzz as the day has gone along. I think I would maybe pivot either McKenzie if you want to be really risky and get everything else you want. Probably don't need to do that on FanDuel because of the way their salary cap works. You don't have the multiplier for the salary like you do on DraftKings. It's probably Allen Robinson for me. I mentioned at the top of the show, Van Jefferson is out for the Rams. They really don't have a lot of depth at receiver. We saw Skowronek last year kind of flounder when he was given an opportunity. And so those targets are basically going to go to the tight ends. They're going to go to Kupp and they're going to go to Robinson. So if Buffalo brackets coverage on Cooper Kupp, I think you could see Robinson have a big game. A huge upgrade, obviously, in the offense that he's in this year. Compared to where he's been the last few years, floundering around with bad teams. So, if he's washed, he's washed, but I'll take some chances on him in this offense. So that would kind of be my way. And then, of course, as always, in these builds, and this applies, Carolina guy was also asking, how do you not be duplicated in these showdown builds? And it's really tough on FanDuel. It's still tough on DraftKings, but leaving salary on the table is always an option. Don't be afraid to leave $2,000-$3,000 on the table in some of these showdown builds to give yourself a better chance of having a unique lineup. You don't want to tie for first place with 950 of your closest friends. You'd rather, win it solo or tie with maybe 3 or 4 people. So leaving money on the table is a good way to do that. So let's kind of go through some of the other options. We got 20 minutes here until the game starts.
Can I put something else in for FanDuel, Justin? Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think too, you got to take stands in these things, like especially on FanDuel. Like the one guy that goes off at cap, like for instance, if you think Josh Allen, and this is just me, if you think Josh Allen is actually going to be the highest owned player on the slate, the best captain, like I just hit the lock button. Like if you really think, I just don't give myself any outs, because what you really want if you're multi-entering, you want as many shots as possible with the top play to get everything else right. And so if you've got 150 lineups and Josh Allen is the top play as an example, and you've got him in all 150, your MVP, now you've given yourself the upside to get there. And now it's all about, out of this combination, do I have one of these weird plays that's going to take me to the top, the difference between 5 points and 8 points from a 3-4% on guy? Like, because if you lock in Allen, you're going to get some lineups with Kupp. You're going to get some lineups with Diggs. You're going to get lineups with everybody. But do you have the right combo with that one guy that's slightly off, and then everybody looks at it in the night and goes, God, that was so obvious. Why didn't I think of that? Well, they probably had massive exposure to these other guys and just filtered that one in. So on FanDuel especially, I think you got to get really aggressive and understand that it's all or nothing. Like, I'm not trying to just cash. I'm trying to go all the way and take it down solo.
Yeah, that's a great point. Trying to be level with the field in terms of exposure on every player is tough to basically not just bleed your money away to the rake. You got to take stands on some of these things. And that will make your results a little bit more volatile. Obviously, we're talking if you're playing tournaments and playing for those big first place prizes. Don't be afraid to take some stands on some of these guys. So yeah, you like Allen, you put him in every lineup, and then maybe he's 75, 80% owned combined between flex and captain or MVP if you're on FanDuel. But you have him in 100. So if he goes nuts, then it's the 20% of people that didn't play him is just behind the eight ball there. And like you said, you put it pretty well. You give yourself more chances with that optimal combo to put good players around it. So I know we both like Allen quite a bit. We've got Stafford projected about 6 points below him. He's also a little bit cheaper. So your thoughts on Stafford tonight?
Yeah, I like Stafford. Don't love Stafford just because, his way to score fantasy points is a lot different. Like, if he's going to have an up, and let me say this too, we don't need everybody to have like a nuts upside game. We just need them to be relatively close. Like, if Josh Allen scores 22 fantasy points and Matt Stafford scores 20, Stafford's essentially almost an equal play because now you've got a discount on one of the top scorers. You were probably able to get in someone else that could only score more points. But I think if this game is going to stay competitive, you got to have Stafford throwing the ball. He's got to be scoring touchdowns. And so I like Stafford, don't love Stafford. If I had to choose between the two tonight straight up, it's Allen because of the rushing floor. But I don't hate Stafford at all. And clearly, if Cooper Kupp is going to be successful, Stafford is going to have some reasonably good of a game for him to get there as well.
All right, the one area we haven't touched on really at all yet is the running backs, and this is a spot that's going to make people nervous. We don't have a lot of ownership on these guys. Buffalo's a team that last year they had a couple guys. They had Singletary, they had Moss, kind of rotating back and forth.
They
Singletary
had Matt Breida at one point too.
Yep, and Singletary kind of had the upper hand for carries, but they've never used him as a true workhorse. And now you've got James Cook in the mix, a guy that they seem to be fairly high on. He's really cheap as an option, and who knows how many touches he's going to get. Who knows how many touches Moss is still going to get. And then with the Rams, again, another backfield that had injury issues at times last year. You've got Akers and Henderson both healthy. We don't really know how they're going to split up the touches this year. So how do we handle two teams that are clearly using a split backfield here?
Yeah, I definitely thought I didn't expect Henderson to come in at close to 20% tonight, to be honest with you. That one caught me off guard. So I'm almost inclined, Justin, to just hit the fade on Henderson. And if he burns me, he burns me. Because that's really, to me, 20% on a showdown, that's really high ownership on a guy that I don't think is going to lead the charge. I think if at anything, it's a 60-40 split between Akers and Henderson. I'm thinking more 70-30, but I could be wrong. So, like I said, it's speculation. But 20% on Henderson tonight, that's really high for me. So I think I'm taking the X button approach with him. I think I'm just taking the X button approach with Zach Moss. I'm going to key in on Akers, Singletary, and I think even James Cook, he's at 18%, but he's cheap. So he's very cheap. So I feel a little bit different about the salary distribution there. And I could have mentioned this in FanDuel as well. And I know we're kind of talking a little bit more strategy tonight than usual, but I think taking players out of your pool is just as important as the lock button to me in Showdown. Because when I'm hitting the lock button and I want to get in good plays, if I can get zero exposure to guys that are just not going to do anything, now I'm really increasing my chances of hitting that nut combo. So I know I talked about the lock button, but I think it's equally as important to get rid of guys that you think are going to have an extreme lack of production. I'm not saying someone you think, and I know Henderson could have production, but I'm saying at 4,800, I can just get rid of him and have other players to make up that difference. So yeah, at running back, Akers, Singletary for sure. I do feel like they're going to lead the charge. I'm getting rid of Zach Moss altogether, getting rid of Henderson altogether. And then as a result, because James Cook is 2,800 and, he's going to have some form of a role for the price, I think it's worth it to get him in. And I know Zach Moss is 3K, but I still think Zach Moss is the odd guy out here for what it's worth.
Yeah, I agree. James Cook is really, really has the potential to be a strong NFL back. Impressed with his skill set in college, even though at Georgia they kind of rotated guys around. If he gets 10 to 12 touches, he can be used on the goal line. I think James Cook is a strong tournament option tonight. Another thing that I want to bring up, and you mentioned, we're doing a little bit more strategy, but I think that's relevant because it's week one. We're all kind of getting back into the mix of these showdown builds, and we're all kind of preparing these lineups for the first time here in about 8 months. So game flow is certainly, you can tell yourself a story about how a game's going to go. And so like this build that I just kind of, sampled over here to the side, you take somebody like, so if you think that Buffalo is going to get out to a lead in this game, in this build, I put Josh Allen in there, I put McKenzie, and I put Diggs in there. Mix and match, do what you want. You want to put other receivers in there, that's fine. You want to put Davis in there, that works too. And then you put Akers in there. So this build would be a build that would work if the Rams happen to get out to a lead in the game. Maybe they're trying to run the football more, so you got Akers there, and then Buffalo's in catch-up mode, so you got 3 of their passing game weapons. And you can do this build in reverse too. You could play Singletary, and then you could play, Kupp and Stafford and build kind of the Rams passing game. So you just got to tell yourself a story about how you think these games are going to go, and then build some lineups accordingly. So that's a good way to get yourself kind of ahead of the game based on how you think the game's going to play out. If you want to be really aggressive with that, you can do that with a bunch of lineup builds and use the same approach that Will was just talking about with Xing players out. It's less relevant in this game where it would be really surprising if it was a blowout one way or the other. But, we're going to get some games later in the year that it's like Tampa Bay against the Jets or something like that. And you could see, blowouts happen and you can kind of maybe build your lineups accordingly. So I agree with your thoughts on running back. Henderson doesn't really grab me at that ownership. I do like James Cook because he's cheap. I am out on Moss. I think Cook is your second running back on that team with a chance to get a surprising amount of work. So we'll see how that goes. All right, we've touched on the receivers a little bit, but let's go through it again. I know we've probably got people just joining that have joined throughout the show. Welcome if you are. First game of the season, Bills and Rams starting here in about 10 minutes. We're going through it from a DFS angle. If you're catching up on injuries, Van Jefferson is out for the Rams. He's the only major injury scratch of note. Everybody else should be good to go. This will be more of a thing later weeks once the injuries start to pile up. But let's talk receivers here. If you've got to choose one guy at the top, is it Kupp or is it Diggs for you? I think you're muted.
Man, coming out of the gate, rookie mistake. Got the mic muted.
Happens to me all the time, whether I'm trying or not sometimes, so you're good.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Kupp if I'm taking them straight up. I mean, I think we've seen last season with Stafford, Kupp is his guy. Like, that's his guy. He's gonna find ways to get him the ball. And even last season, Justin, you'd look in the first half sometimes, and everybody's like, "Oh God, Kupp, he's selling." That's the new young free. Oh, he's selling. And by the end of the game, he's got 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, they will find ways to get him the ball, and he can catch the deep ball, the intermediate ball, and the short passing game. And that's what makes him so lethal. Not that any other receivers can't do that, but clearly, man, I mean, Kupp's the best receiver in the league. I think, in my opinion, there's some other great receivers. I mean, maybe he's 1A, 1B, 1C, however you want to slice it, but just a top option in the league, and I don't think anything changes tonight.
Yeah, he's going to get his targets. We know they're thin at receiver. He's going to get his numbers one way or the other. So He is expensive, particularly on DraftKings. It is a little tougher to fit him in there, but tough guy to hit the X button on. We've had a lot of people throughout the show kind of asking about those secondary receivers for the Bills. People asking about McKenzie, people asking about Crowder, people asking about Davis. Like, I think McKenzie is ahead of Crowder for me, and McKenzie is also cheaper, particularly on DraftKings at 2,400. So I like McKenzie, but you could see a couple different paths to Buffalo having a big game here.
Absolutely. Justin, I've been sitting on this play, and I don't think this is a hot take, but I was hoping we were going to get around to it. Can I please talk about Allen Robinson? Oh, sure. Pretty please. I'm hit the lock button on Allen Robinson tonight in the flex. That's my take on Allen Robinson. Let me tell you why. And I think I talked about this with someone. It might have been you, Justin. I can't remember. Maybe it was Luke. Allen Robinson hasn't had this good of a quarterback his whole career. He's had Blake Bortles. He's had
Trubisky
and Justin Fields. And guess what he was doing? Putting up numbers in the worst possible NFL wide receiver conditions. And now you're telling me he's going out to LA with a team that should be readily available to get him the ball with Stafford and this offense. Robert Woods is gone. And on any other slate, Justin, if Cooper Kupp's $12K, Robert Woods is $9K, $8K. He's not 6,200. There's no Odell Beckham. Van Jefferson is out. I'm hitting the lock button on Allen Robinson in the flex tonight. And I mean, really, man, if I wasn't so confident in Allen and the captain, I mean, good golly, Miss Molly. Like, I think Allen Robinson, even at 28%, like I'd be well over the field because I think this is his shot now to finally have solid production game to game, his chance to have be on a winning team. He hasn't even been on a winning team, Justin, much less had a good quarterback. I love Allen Robinson. I think this is his time to shine. I think he's going to seize the moment here. I think Allen Robinson is on his way to a big game. I think 75, 80 yards, 6 catches and a touchdown. That's what I've got him clocked at pretty much. Love Robinson here. I think if there was a showdown play of the day for me, I just in the prop shop, Allen Robinson is my showdown play of the day. Like, I think he's going to have a massive game for his price.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I mentioned him as my favorite contrarian captain, so I can definitely get on board with that as the wide receiver that, obviously he's going to have some ownership, but could smash on a point per dollar basis. Speaking of smashing on a point per dollar basis, all these showdown slates that I did shows for last year, it was like tight end mania. Every showdown slate was like 6 tight ends scoring touchdowns. It seemed like backup tight ends, third string tight ends, elite tight ends.
Justin, your mic did the thing.
Justin went on a mandatory mute.
Yep,
I went on my tight end mania.
I went on my normal once a show hiatus for the microphone muting, so that's okay. It just got excited talking about tight ends. Every showdown slate last year was all the tight end touchdowns. So we've got Higbee and Knox as kind of the primary options on these teams. You got to pick between the two of them, play them both.
Yeah. I mean, and really, they both should be successful tonight. They should have a nice, stable target share. And I'm not saying they're both going to be like 25%, but I think by the end of the season, both of these guys probably have 12 to 15% target share on these teams, Justin? I mean, I think that's fair to say. And I think they're going to be fine tonight. Which one would I choose? I'd probably be going with Higbee because I feel like they have less to work with on the offensive side of the ball in terms of the passing game. But clearly, and everybody's going to say it, all Dawson Knox does is catch touchdowns. He just runs up and down the field and 2 touchdowns, 5 catches, 2 touchdowns for 10 yards. Dawson Knox extraordinaire. I'm sure he'll have a better game than that. I think he has a good game. But if I had to choose between one, it's definitely Higbee.
Yeah, same here. But they're a little pricey for me. Like Knox is more expensive than Allen Robinson on DraftKings, and that feels weird. So I'm underweight on the tight ends, but you can obviously sprinkle them in, and the touchdown upside is certainly there. So just a little cautious because of the salaries. We've got defenses here. I mean, 52 is the total in this game, which is pretty high. So nobody's really considering these defenses, but it's not like these teams are a slouch.
Right, Justin?
We got 3 minutes.
Good God. I was about to do it again.
You got 3 minutes. It's 8:20.
Would
you think it was 8:15? We reminded you before the show.
I know. Yeah, guys, that's another thing. Please help your good friend Chief out and remind him of what time this
8:20. You got 2 minutes and 18 seconds. So if you got a CSV to upload, get it done. And I was just talking about kickers and defenses, so nothing super exciting. But it's not like these teams are a slouch defensively. I mean, these teams are decent defensive teams, but we've got a high total in this game. So, how are you handling kickers and defenses? Just kind of throwing them in as needed, or X button, or what do you think?
I'm not as interested in the defenses. I'm always interested in kickers, just because they score points. And they can score.
You mentioned you're on the field goal props tonight, so
listen. Well, Justin, these field goal props are almost free. So the field goal props are 1.5 this week. That's like saying, hey, can these guys kick 2 field goals tonight? They're going to. The game's gonna. That's what I'm saying. I think the game starts out slow. They kick 1 field goal in the first half, 1 in the second half, and it's free. Anyway, it feels free to me. If anything else, hop into another game. Justin McPherson is at 1.5 this week. He was kicking 3 and 4 field goals a game for Cincinnati, much less. Anyway, so I like, if I had to choose one, I like Gay more than I like what's the other guy's name? Bass. I like Gay more than Bass for what it's worth.
Yeah, we got them both projected for around 8 points, so worthwhile lineup fillers. Izzy in the YouTube chat was Izzy is trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel with Scourneck or Tutu Atwell. In terms of talent, Tutu Atwell is going to run circles around Scourneck. In terms of opportunity, though, the Rams are just thin enough on bodies to where Scourneck is probably going to get more looks and more targets. So, like if Atwell breaks a huge play, that's probably what you're going to need, because he's probably only going to be on the field for 10, 15 snaps. So Scourneck is probably going to be on the field a lot more than that. So, Izzy was answering somebody else's question about who will be the wide receiver 3 for the Rams. It's probably going to be Scourneck. I think Atwell will be more of a role player, 10 or 15 snaps. Scourneck probably on the field 35, 40 snaps, but Atwell's the better athlete. So with that, we are at lock. It is 8:20. Did you get your lineups in there, Chief?
I did. So what happens is there we go. My man Steve. Doesn't matter, Chief. They're both going to kick 2 field goals. Let's go. I did get my lineups in. So there you have it. And guess what? I did leave out Stephon Diggs on FanDuel for what it's worth. Not like X button. I'm saying my main single entry team.
I've never seen somebody so excited for kickers, but funny story before we get out of here, I have learned that I cannot say anything bad about kickers in any capacity because my junior year of college at Northern Illinois. Now we're going back a ways. This is shortly after the Garrett Wolf days, and Garrett Wolf was a player that got drafted by the Bears, and obviously he was terrorizing MAC, low level Division I college football. But anyway, Northern Illinois still has a really good football program, and so lots of people at the game. So my junior year of college, we were at one of the college football games. it was the first game of the year, and NIU had a kicker that missed 2 field goals, I think, in the first half. And I don't remember what I said. I didn't curse or anything, but I was disparaging the kicker for missing the 2 kicks. And, somebody finally had enough in front and turned around and said, "That's our son. Could you please quiet down on the, the harassing of the kicker?" Whatever, it was embarrassing. But then the dad was like, "Well, he was getting looked at by like Ohio State and all these big colleges." I could not help myself and said, "It's obvious why he's not kicking there and he's kicking here instead." But from that point on, I can't disparage kickers. And I think the kid went on to have a pretty good career for NIU. I don't even remember his name, but I was sitting right behind his parents talking smack about him. And so I got to be nice to the kickers and their families. And so I'm pro kicker, and I hope all your field goal props hit for you there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And look, I'm going to tell you right now, I'll just go ahead and put this out there. I'm going to have an all field goal kicker card on Sunday in tribute to all of these kickers that are going to kick 2 field goals in these games. I'm so excited. It should be a good season. I'm excited about this game. I'm going to try to watch it for sure.
Everyone's excited for all their week 1 fantasy action, and Will's going to be sweating the red zone drives, hoping for some field goals on Sunday. I love it. With that, we'll go ahead and get out of here. Let everybody watch the game. Remember, jam-packed media content schedule here on RotoGrinders for NFL season. We'll lead you up to all these primetime locks here on Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. Will is busy on Tuesdays with his prop shop show and food for thought with Justin Carlucci. We've got the DFS OGs podcast on Wednesday, the Swolecast, the Pick Six show with Dean, and we've got we're bringing in people from other companies and collaborative stuff too. That just a whole lot of shows keeping you company every day of the week during the NFL season. So check all those out. If you like these videos, give us a thumbs up on the YouTube stream before you head out. We appreciate that very much. Thanks to Devin for producing behind the scenes for us. Thanks to Will for joining me. I am Justin, and we'll be back here with another one of these videos for Sunday Night Football. Until then, be sure to stay tuned for all our other great content here on RotoGrinders. Good luck tonight, everybody. Have a great Thursday.